Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to cilinixfxcapital and welcome to your daily updates on Ethereum. We're going to do a critical, I would argue, update on Ethereum and what to expect. The price action overall in the last 24 hours, I would say, has not been fully unexpected. I mean, if you remember my video yesterday, and if you don't, that's fine. We already knew that it was quite likely that we would pull back, right? I mean, the price was at that point of time sitting around 3,400, and what I said is, okay, I think we're going to pull back. And then after that, we can get some more recovery. And ultimately, this, I still think, is in play. But because of the fundamental changes we have seen in the last 24 hours, I slightly have to amend it to something like this. Okay? So a bit of a deeper pullback, and I would also say an extended pullback. And the key reason for that is not specifically Ethereum. Although I must say, when I say it's not specifically Ethereum, this is market-wide. If you take a look at Bitcoin since Wednesday afternoon, since yesterday morning, has not specifically under or outperformed Ethereum, right? I mean, Bitcoin is not looking better, XRP is not looking better, Sui is not looking better, Solana is not looking better. So Ethereum is not underperforming the markets, but the key is that it's also most certainly not outperforming the markets. There's absolutely zero sign right now for Ethereum that it's going to outperform Bitcoin. This correlation is incorrect, but the correlation at this point of time for Ethereum is sitting at one of the highest levels I have seen in a very long time. You can see that for ETH USDC, it's sitting around 89%. So for 89%, Ethereum is just completely going to follow Bitcoin. And that is a bad sign. Right, that is always, if you take a look at all the times that Ethereum has underperformed Bitcoin, the correlation was actually always very high. And then you might say, well, if the correlation is so high, so Ethereum is moving together with Bitcoin, how can it be that Ethereum falls down lower than Bitcoin? That is that 10% of the correlation that is not explained, all right? And that 10% is very bearish, all right? You basically want the correlation to be as low as possible. That usually means that Ethereum is outperforming. It rarely happens that with high correlation, Ethereum is outperforming Bitcoin. So that is the fundamental situation. And then outside of that, I mean, when we specifically take a look at Ethereum, the bounce has also not been amazing. We had a small bullish divergence here, as you can see, but ultimately that also does not matter that much. And something that is different for Ethereum in regards to, or at least in comparison to Bitcoin, is that we still have some imbalances to the downside. You can see where the buyer conviction for Bitcoin was actually tested at the lows we made on Tuesday. Here you can see we made these lows. And then what Bitcoin did is it tested those lows and it actually bounced back from that. Ethereum has never tested those lows. So that adds a bit of a magnet to that level to test that buyer conviction. Previous buyers that held at that level or bought at that level, will they still be able to hold that? The fundamentals around the markets at this point of time are also not amazing. The volatility index today has opened higher, or at least it has rallied after launch. Dollar strength index, I don't really care about that, but equities are also not amazing. So then we have an underperforming Ethereum. We have fundamentals that are not amazing, and we have a magnet to the downside. I think ultimately these markets are very fundamentals driven, right? So if we get some good news, we can still accelerate the recovery I expected, right? Because I do expect recovery. But I think short term, it's much more likely that we're going to push down, test that level at 3,100, potentially spike down lower. But I do think we'll be able to hold that level, right? So short term, I'm slightly bearish, but I think we'll be able to hold that and then ultimately start some sort of recovery into 3,500, into 3,600. But that is something I will keep you updated on. But ultimately, that is what I think you need to know for the next couple of days going into the weekend. And then I would very much recommend you to at least keep an eye on the volatility index, right? So the volatility index is basically a measure of how risky the markets are. Are they risk on? Are they risk off? If that starts to decrease, we can accelerate the recovery and we might not even retest the lows. If that is increasing, the probability of testing the lows will greatly increase as well. So keep your eyes on that, but that is what I think you need to know for now. So thank you for watching, everybody. Take care and bye.